I'm absolutely thrilled to introduce today's guest to the Build Your Author Brand podcast. This author is a best-selling author. He is living his best life ever by telling stories and traveling. And it's all because he took a chance and rolled the dice. Let me introduce you to Ty Hutchinson. He's the author of the Abby Kane FBI thrillers, as well as the Say Assassin thrillers. I'm really thrilled to have Ty join me today. Hello, Ty Hutchinson. I'm so pleased to have you here on the podcast. Thanks for joining me.
Hello. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
If you could introduce yourself. So I know that you're a fantastic indie author who has enjoyed, let's say, a fair amount of success, and that's probably putting it very mildly. So would you just introduce us to you as an author, tell us a bit about you and your books?
Yeah, so my name's Ty Hutchinson, and I write mostly crime thrillers. I write a couple action thrillers, and I've been doing this for a little over a decade now. And I kind of got into writing on a kind of a spur of the moment kind of thing. I was getting burnt out at my old job, which was in advertising. And one day I decided, hey, I'm having trouble selling this ad campaign, and maybe I can turn it into a book. And it kind of just snowballed from there. And I always tell people, had I known how difficult the journey would have been, I probably wouldn't have done it. But I was so naive at the time that I just sort of thought, wow, how hard can this be? Just writing a book, I know how to write. This is a guy who's never written nothing longer than a paragraph in his entire ad career, It's like, what's so hard about writing a book?
Yeah, you had the skill set right there. Yeah, it's the
Yeah,
same. Yeah.
exactly.
And I'm going to assume that that naivety probably served you well at the beginning, right?
It did because every time I'd run into a roadblock, I'd be like, well, let's just handle this and then it'll be free sailing from here on. And then something else would come up and something else would come up. And at that point, you realize how difficult it is, but you're already into it. You're knee deep into it. And you can't turn around now. And plus, I made it a point to tell people what I was going to do. So I didn't want to look like a failure. So I just had to keep going. But I think most of it is I just sort of thought, well, I just got to get over this one roadblock, and then everything is smooth sailing from here on out. I never really thought it would be that difficult. I think that's a positive because I see so many people him and haw over, should I do it? Should I not doing it? And they start focusing so much on all the negatives that it just becomes this wall that they're trying to climb over, and I think that it just people end up not doing anything with their lives if they approach every single opportunity like that.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, what was the kind of journey into indie publishing then? Did you just go, right, I'm just going to publish my books, or did you have a phase where you were thinking, I want an agent, or how did that go?
I actually did start off thinking I wanted an agent because I didn't know about self-publishing. And so I started looking at how to query agents and, what the process was like and all this kind of stuff. And then I discovered self-publishing, and it was this guy, I don't want to screw up his name, but J.A. Conrath, I think is his name. He's an author in Chicago, and he had this blog all about self-publishing. He was in it, and everyone started following his blog and going to his website and on the reading his blog posts and whatnot, and it was so informative about this new world of self-publishing. I think I read maybe a couple blogs and I already knew I was going to self-publish because coming from an ad background, I was like, well, why would I trust someone else with the marketing and cover design? We do that all day long here. So I didn't think I needed a publisher. And I ended up reading all of his blogs, and I was just sold from that point on. There was just no discussion about going the traditional route. I just shut it off and went indie all the way.
So now, kind of 10 years into it, you are. And how many books have you published in that time?
46.
Wow, wow.
Yeah, it's a
That
lot.
is a huge achievement. So now when you look back, are there any regrets that you self-published now at this point?
No, I'm so glad I did do it. And back at the time while I was doing it, this was back in 2011, I published my first book. So I started writing it in 2009. And there was such a stigma against self-published authors. You know, everyone's like, "Oh, you're just a hack. You know, you can't get a publisher or an agent. That's why you have to do it yourself," and blah blah. Blah. And you know, you just would get just people crapping on you all the time about what you're doing. And I just was kind of like, I think again, it's my ad background. I'm so used to people going, this idea sucks, come up with something better. You know, you just kind of grow thick skin, and I never let it bother me. And so therefore I never had any regrets. I feel like it's the best decision I ever made because it allowed me to have this life that I have now, which is total complete freedom to do whatever I want. And I support it by just telling stories to people all over the world. I couldn't ask for a better job. It's not even a job. It's a way of life.
That's amazing. There are going to be lots of authors listening who are just going to be like, I want that. Like that is their goal, that's their dream. So tell us a little bit about how you've got here then. How did you get to this point of having that kind of freedom, being able to do a job that doesn't even feel like a job? What kind of been some of the big steps that have got you here?
Because I didn't know what I was doing when I first started out. My first couple of books didn't really sell that well, and I think it was by the time I wrote the third book in this series, I was feeling that this isn't working. I need to stop, and so I stopped and I started all over again from scratch, new series, new character, new everything. And this time I put a little bit more thought into it, and that's how I created Abby Kane, who is my main character in the Abby Kane FBI series. And I got to tell you, man, this woman saved my life because at the time I was still working in advertising. I was stressed out. My health was like going downhill. And, you know, it was a terrible time for me. And I came up with this character and I wrote this book called Corktown. And it literally is what turned the corner for me because I think after a couple months it'd been out, it was only out for maybe 2 or 3 months. And I looked at the sales, and I could already see like, oh my God, I think I can make a living, not just I off that book, that one book. I thought I could do it. I go, well, if I cut corners here and I budget like this, I think I can make a living just off this book. And imagine if I just write more books like this, you know? And that was a huge turning point. And now there's 18 books in the series. And I talk about her as if she's a real person because to me she is, you know? But Abby literally saved my life at that time. And she has given me the life that I'm living now. You know, I'm a nomadic author. I travel. I haven't had a permanent residency in 11 years. I just go wherever I want and I just write. As long as I got an internet connection, I'm good.
Your story is amazing. So let's get into the author brand question for a little moment.
Yeah.
So when you and I met, tell me what, or tell the listeners what you told me about what your author brand was, if you remember.
Oh, I think I said something like, oh, I think I'm the action man traveler kind of guy, you know? And you just kind of was like, you know, heard that. And I was like, and I again, you know, I got a lot of thick skin. So I kind of took that as, wow, she might be right about this, you know. Maybe it's not all that it cracked up to be. And you said something about, well, there's a lot of authors that can claim that. And I was like, yeah, you know what, there is. So what's making me stand out? And that's, well, you know, we did that work about trying to find out who I am. And, you know, if I had to sum up my author brand like in one sentence, I always tell people that I say yes more than I say no. And by saying yes more than I say no, I take advantage of a lot more opportunities that come my way. When you say yes, you have to put yourself out there, and it's scary. When you say no, you're safe. Nothing can go wrong because you said no. But if you say yes, and you know, you quit your high-paying ad job to write books that you've never written before, and then on a whim, you know, at the time I was going through a divorce, my wife was like, "Hey, you know, now that we're separating, you should travel and write. That's what you always wanted to do." And a month later, I'd sold everything I owned, and I was on a flight to Thailand, one-way ticket, and I was going to travel the world and write books everywhere. And you don't do that by saying no, 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 no. You do that by saying yes. And I think that's how I always lived my life since I was a kid. And it really became my mantra as I got older. And my characters I put this into my characters. I put them through the ringer. I give them obstacles that are insane. and you've got to be crazy to tackle that. And so I think a big part of who I am goes into my characters.
Yeah. I'd just like to pause today's conversation to let you know about something very special I will be running for authors next year in June 2025. My authors retreat at the absolutely stunning location of Arddoch, a private venue on the banks of Loch Lomond in Scotland. This retreat is focused on allowing authors to meet with other like-minded authors, unwind and relax in the most luxurious, very private setting on the doorstep of one of Scotland's most breathtaking locations of natural beauty. The retreat gives you space and time to indulge your own creativity and to tap into your vision for your future author journey, goals, and success. You will be provided with an inspiring, reviving, expansive break away from your everyday world to connect with yourself, your inner creativity, and of course, to have some fun with other authors. Workshops will be included. We'll be working on defining your vision for your author brand and guiding you through the next steps for your author success. We'll be combining these practical workshops with nourishing and nurturing practices, including yoga and a beautiful mindful walk. With the empowerment that comes from being surrounded by a highly supportive and welcoming group of authors who are ready to learn and grow in community, the Authors Retreat is a truly powerful experience. I would love to share it with you. Please go to the website buildyourbrandwithpr.com, where you can see all of the details about the retreat. And please do contact me if you have any questions or you could be interested to come along with us. It's that quality of always just going for it, isn't it? And just like, if you have an idea, try it.
Exactly. I mean, the worst that can happen is it doesn't work. Who cares?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I was telling someone a couple of days ago, I go, yeah, I'm thinking about writing in a new genre, probably do a pen name. They go, why? And I go, well, it's because it's so different from what I'm writing right now. And then I said, and also if the book flops, I can just shut everything down.
Yeah.
No one knows.
That is a really good point. Yeah, for people listening, yeah, pen names definitely have their uses. Because I get asked a lot about should I use a pen name, but yeah, they're useful, right?
They are. I didn't think they were until I reached this part of this stage of my career where I feel like I want to branch out what I'm doing.
So we kind of did the author brand work. So you have confidence now, don't you? I think in terms of who are you as an author? Has that helped you in terms of the marketing or in terms of how you communicate about the books to new readers? Like, tell me about that side.
Yeah, it's totally changed my mindset. Before, I was really stuck in the author mindset. And I used to lie to myself and tell me, no, I'm not. I mean, I can switch over to marketing, but I really wasn't doing any marketing. What I thought was marketing is nothing compared to what I'm doing right now. And it really changed my mindset. It forced me to look at my business about everything I'm doing. It forced me to look at my books, forced me to look at how I interact with my readers. It forced me to look at everything. And I've spent the last year just pretty much grinding and overhauling my business, even going back and starting some things over again because of this mind shift that I've had, where it totally opened my eyes to realizing that what I was doing before was like this much. And I could have been doing this much, but I just had no idea. And I've been successful at this for a decade.
Yeah.
And I was just doing so little. I could have been doing so much more. At the time, everyone didn't know what they were doing in the author business. So you're just kind of following what other people are doing. You're training information. And that was great in the beginning, but it also became a crutch, I think, where people got stuck doing the same thing over and over and over again. And that same hall wisdom gets passed down and it no longer worked. It worked back in 2015. It doesn't work in 2024. Completely different landscape now, the business. It's more of a business than just writing. Back then, yeah, you can just write, throw the book up on Amazon and the money just came into your bank account. Now, I feel like I got to fight for every sale.
Right, right.
Yeah, I got to have plans. I got to have marketing strategy.
You gotta know, you gotta have an A to B. You've got to have a map.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you don't do that, it's so easy, even for a business like mine, to just start tanking. It's very easy for your business to start going down. But when you got to turn that ship around, it takes a lot of work. And I've gotten pretty good about turning it around. But if there's one thing I learned, is you can never put it on autopilot. I tried. Boy, did I try to put it on autopilot. It just does not work. Doesn't work, man.
In that time, I mean, obviously, so much has changed, hasn't it, in the self-publishing world and the indie publishing world? What have been the biggest changes? Is it simply that there is so many more authors now publishing books? Like, what is it that's changed in that time?
Yeah, I mean, because there's so many more authors publishing and there's so many good books out there, readers have so much choice now. That's really the issue. It's not so much that you're competing against other authors. It's just your competition. The wall you got to get over is visibility, because there's just so much choice. There's so much noise going on. And then not only are you competing for your readers' attention, you're competing against platforms like TikTok and Instagram, where you get into that doom scrolling, and next thing you know, 2 hours go by, and all you did was look at videos. So you're competing against a lot of other forms of entertainment that people use to pass their time. So that's what I think makes it harder.
Because I speak to a lot of authors who are maybe writing their first books, or maybe even have written a few, but they feel super overwhelmed about that kind of what you're talking about, that there's
Yeah.
so much you can do now for marketing, and they just don't, people don't know where to start, or they think, have I got to do all of these things all at once? What would you say? I mean, you've probably had similar
You know,
conversations.
when I tell people, when they ask me, and I always preface it by saying, don't take what I say as absolute, because your journey is going to be different from mine. But I tell them, get good at authoring. Make sure you can write a book that people actually want to read. Focus on that first. Don't think about the marketing area. Make sure you have an offer that people are interested in. And that offer is your book. Make sure it's the best book you can write. Get good at selling books. Get good at writing books. And then a lot of authors start off on Amazon, which is great. Get good at selling books on Amazon. It's the biggest bookstore in the world. If you can't sell books there, then you're gonna have some problems. It's like walking to a brothel and you can't get laid. The thing is, Amazon's the biggest bookstore. You got to be able to sell books there. You got to move it. You got to prove to yourself that you can move books and that you've got a product that people actually want. A lot of people don't talk about that. They talk about other things like, oh, well, you got to have the right cover and you got to have the right description and all this, and all that's important. But ultimately, you've got to have a book that a lot of people want to read. This is a low value, high volume business. You got to sell hundreds of books every day. On the first of every month, that clock resets. You got to climb that mountain to reach your sales goal. How many books do I have to sell to reach that sales goal? And in order to sell that many books, you have got to sell a book that has wide appeal. There's nothing wrong with being niche, but you're just going to have to get that much better at your marketing in finding those niche people. I think every book has an audience.
Yeah.
But if you want to sell a lot of books and make a lot of money, you got to have wide appeal.
Yes. I find myself saying that a lot. Like, every book will have a readership by and large. There might be one or two exceptions, but on the whole, every book will have a readership. But it's about knowing who those readers are going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's hard figuring it out. It took me a long time to figure it out. And it took me a long time to really understand my books and how to communicate that to readers. And I'm still learning how to do that. You hear all these catchphrases like, oh, you got to come up with a great hook. As an author, you could come up with so many angles on your book. Well, which is the right angle? Which is the right hook? You could come up with a hook that you think is awesome, it's dynamite, and be plugging away at it, and it's just the worst hook possible, but you can't see it, you don't know it, and you can't understand why you can't sell the books. And in that case, it has nothing to do with your book. It has to do with your marketing, how you're presenting the book. Again, your offer. How are you presenting that offer? It's so important. This is something I've learned. It's like your offer is everything. People aren't interested in your offer, you're not going to make any money. Yeah, that's another thing that I hear a lot of newbie authors talking about, and it kind of irritates me if I could give one type of advice, there's so much advice you can give to
Mm,
a newbie author, but if I could give one type of advice, it would be to be honest with yourself. Be honest about what you want to do, what you want to achieve, because if you sit there and you say, well, it's not about the money, I got a day job, or I'm just doing this for fun, that's cool. But then why are you asking about marketing strategies and how to get better at Facebook and how to increase your sales if it's not about the money?
mm,
You got to be honest with yourself. And that means putting yourself out there, because you've already got all these hurdles that you got to get over. Why create even more by putting one foot into the pool and keeping the other one out? It's like, I don't, it's not really about the money. I'm just kind of doing this for fun. Well, then fine. Just hand them out for free at the park or something.
yeah,
Worry
yeah,
about marketing.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And my other favorite question that I get, or favorite kind of assumption that I see in author circles a lot, is, well, my book's good enough, it's just going to sell itself, it's just going to find its own audience because it's that good, you know like
Yeah.
the book will sell itself, essentially, is what I think a lot of authors go into it fully believing. Yeah,
Hmm. And I don't think there's anything wrong with doing that. You've worked hard on it. You're proud of it. And,
yeah,
to this day, I still want that to happen. And you know what? Lightning can strike, it does.
yeah,
You do see it happen, but the stars really got to align. And it's always good to have plan B. So if you put it out there and it doesn't sell itself, what's the plan B? Which most people have to resort to plan B.
yeah,
Um, or you can just sit there and whine about why your book isn't selling. It's the greatest, and it may be the greatest thing since sliced bread. But if people don't know about it, that brings me back to my point about visibility. It's really hard to break through all the noise and the clutter. People are busy. They're busy with their lives. They're busy with their jobs, their kids, their families, relationships, whatever. And they may really like your book and want to buy it, but they're probably going to forget about your offer 2 minutes after they saw it. And that's just the reality, you know,
yeah,
because people
yeah,
are busy,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and having to decipher what is the problem when there could be 1,000 different things affecting your sales is extremely hard. But as you dig into it and you learn more about your readership and you learn more about your books and about how people are responding to your messages and your content, you start to realize really quickly what's causing the problem. But that only comes after you doing all the work. You're never going to go on into a Facebook group and go, hey, can anyone tell me how to do this? At best, you're going to get fundamentals or best practices, because you've got to take those best practices and you got to iterate until it works for your business. But people don't want to do the work. They want someone else to do the work and then show them the golden key. It's like,
yeah,
it doesn't work that way.
yes, yeah. Which is why, because I'm always saying there is no one size fits all marketing strategy, is there?
No, there's basic fundamentals that everyone knows, and then you got to take that. It's like you can learn how to play basketball, learn the fundamentals, but that's not going to make you the next Michael Jordan. It's
So,
a cruel business, man.
yeah, right, right. With that said, what makes it worthwhile being an indie author? Like, obviously, you've reached a certain level of success, which loads of authors would be envious of. But what have been the best things about the journey to here?
For me, it's probably the freedom that it allows me to feel like I'm not working. Some days it feels like I'm working, but overall, it doesn't feel like I'm working. And I just really enjoy my job, what I do for a living. If I have to have a job, this is the perfect job. And I think for me, that's probably the biggest plus.
Mm,
Just
mm,
telling stories and entertaining people.
yeah.
I love it. I love entertaining people.
And do you feel like you have that kind of that relationship with your reader? Like when you're putting the books out, you're writing them, you're marketing them, do you feel like I'm giving my readers something? Like you're kind of almost imagining those readers?
I think so. I think you've got to make sure that you deliver on everything that you put out there and that you're delivering what they're expected, because even though they might just be spending $6 on the book or whatever the price is, that's still their $6. They don't have to give it to you. But if you entertain them, which is what they're all looking to do, then I think that's what keeps them coming back. They want more of what made them feel great, that escape that you gave them, that book. They want more of that. That's the crack cocaine, man.
Yeah.
They're chasing the dragon.
What has been the scariest thing that you've had to do as an indie author?
I don't know if I get scared. I mean, I get nervous doing things, and it's usually when it happens when I'm trying something new, but it's more of a nervous excitement. It's kind of like when you're going on a roller coaster and you're going up that first climb, that first hill. You're nervous, but you're also excited of the drop that's coming. So I'm really excited about the adventure of not knowing what's going to happen. Can I pull it off? Can I do it? So I don't necessarily get scared, but the fear that I do have, and I think every small business owner has this, is screwing up my own business by making a stupid mistake or overlooking something and tanking my sales. Every time my sales have tanked, and my sales have tanked, it is a direct result of what I did. There are no outside factors. It wasn't because it was summer or it's election year. It was something I did or something I didn't do. It's easy to blame the environment around you, but no, but really it's, if you really are honest with yourself, it's either something you did or something you didn't do.
Right. And I mean
Yeah.
that, that level of honesty and taking responsibility. I mean that, that, like you say, that applies to authors, business owners, everywhere.
Yeah.
Anyone who is, if you are selling something to your audience, like it's taking responsibility, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how else you're gonna make a profit, especially off
Mhm.
the kind of business that we're in, where
Mm.
you gotta move a lot of product if you really want to make a living, especially if you got a family to take care of and everything. You gotta move a lot of books. You gotta convince a lot of people to
Right.
put down another book
Right.
and pick up your book first and read it. Then go back and read the other book,
Yeah.
Because again, you're not really competing against other authors. What you're competing against is time, people's time. That's what you're fighting for, their time.
Mhm.
They only have so much time in a day to read. You want them to grab your book, to either borrow it from KU or purchase it. And you want that thing at the top of their TBR pile.
Yeah. So obviously treating your author business as a business is obviously really important from
Yeah.
what we've been saying. And for authors who are still like, but Ty, how do you do it? Like what's the secret thing? Is it that you put out, 12 videos a day on TikTok? Like what is it, Ty? What do you say to people?
I don't think there's one thing. There is no smoking gun. Everyone can be successful for so many different reasons.
Mm,
It could be a single TikTok video. It could be an amazing Facebook ad campaign.
mm.
It could be some author plugged it. Some big author plugged your book, or Amazon gave you a daily Kindle daily deal. There's so many different things that can launch it. And I've heard this so many times from so many different authors what kickstarted their career. And it's all different. So what young authors need to do is you kind of got to put your head down and grind away and figure out by trying different things and experimenting. And that takes time, could take money, but mostly time and effort. And you don't know when it's going to work. You don't know when it's going to happen. But that's true with anything. You could spend 4 years and not know that the fifth year is the year that you're going to break out.
Right, right, right. And
That's what I'm saying.
how?
It's like you got to be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
What do you really want? You have to really want this business, because it's one of those businesses that a lot of people kind of put up on a pedestal that they want. So you really got to work hard, and you really, really got to want it.
So yeah, like you said, the authors that are saying, "Oh, I'm writing because because they love writing,
Sure.
they love doing it." And when I say to them, "Do you hope that one day someone other than like your mum will read it?" You know, and
Yeah.
that's the point when when authors start going, "Oh, actually, it would be nice to have people read it."
Yeah. And that's just them. I think they're afraid. They're afraid of putting themselves out there. So they say those things like, oh yeah, it might be nice. Oh yeah, they could do that. Oh yeah. And that's what I'm saying. You got to be honest with yourself. You've got to commit and jump in and know that you could fail.
Yeah,
There's no guarantee. You could have all the right answers and all these people helping you do the right things, and it still may not work. but you don't know until you try. And if you really are passionate about it and you really do want it to work, you'll find a way to make it work, and it will. Everyone started off writing books or selling books without knowing anything. So it's an even playing ground.
So at this point, then, how important would you say it is to have at least some confidence around this is who I am as an author and this is how I present as an author? How important is that piece?
I think it's important because nowadays authors are having to interact more and more with the readers. You know, that saying that they don't buy what you're selling, they're buying you. You're the reason why they're buying. Yeah, they know what you're selling. When I was doing a lot of TikToks, I was living in Thailand at the time. I would do all these really funny videos about life in Thailand, just my own observations, and they'd get millions of views. You know, they people love them. And so people would stop me on the street and go, "Hey, I follow you. Hey, I follow you." And I wasn't really talking about my books or my author stuff, but it's on my profile. But people knew I was an author. They knew I sold books. I didn't need to shove it down their face. They'd ask me, "Oh, so are you still selling this? Are you still writing books? Or what about this book?" You know, they'll ask. So they still know about it. I think it's
Fantastic. Yeah.
important
Yeah.
to know who you are
Yeah.
because it gives you a point of view. And if you don't have a strong point of view, then what you're saying is pretty generic, it's wishy-washy, and people don't really believe you. There's no conviction behind it. When you know who you are and you believe in who you are, you speak to people as if you're their authority. Like you know exactly what you're talking about, and people will listen. And when they listen to you, they like you. They go, "Hey, I'm gonna buy from you." And by the way, your book, yeah, your book sounds good, but that's like a given. Like I've got to like the book, but I like you,
Right.
and I'll continue to support you.
It's the age old marketing thing, isn't it? They're buying you, not the product, or
Yeah,
they've got to know, like, and trust you. That's as important, if not more important, than
yeah.
liking.
I mean, maybe the first time the book made them a customer. You know, they read the
Mm,
description, like, "Oh, this sounds interesting,"
mm,
but they became a super fan
right.
because of everything else, because of me, because of you know, because of my characters, because of my content, because of the stories I tell, because of the interactions they have with me. That's what makes them a super fan, and that's what you want. Look at Taylor Swift.
Mm,
She's got
mm.
millions of super fans. They like her for beyond. They love her music, but they love her.
Yes. Yeah. So they've got to fall in love with you, haven't they, as the author?
Yeah, to
Yeah.
some degree, they've got to like you. They don't like you, they're not going to buy your product. They might. This they might, you know, if they can separate the two. But it's just such an easier way to sell your books and run your business when your readers like you and you have a relationship with them. You can talk with them. You can talk candidly with them. You can learn so much from your readers, and that's something like I wish I had done sooner in my career was pay attention to my readers more. I have learned so much from them in the last 2 years that has helped me reshape my business, help me with my marketing, how I approach marketing, how I approach my books. They're the ones who's buying your book, so they know a lot. You're better off listening to them instead of ignoring them and saying, "Ah, what do you know?
Right.
You've never written anything." They know a lot. They
Yeah.
know a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, this chat has been amazing. Thank you, and I think there's going to be a lot here for authors to think about and be inspired by. But before I leave you, can you let us know what's coming next for you? Are there any books coming up that people should look out for? What's happening?
I actually just finished writing my 18th Abby Kane thriller.
Wow.
18 books in the series. I never thought I'd get that far, but it's coming out next month, November 24th. I'm excited about it. It's called Rotten Gold.
Wow.
Takes place in Southeast Asia. That's the news. But what I'm excited about is, you know, I've been writing crime thrillers for a decade, right? And some action thrillers, a little bit psychological thrillers, but I want to try something different, you know, completely different from my genre. Maybe it's sci-fi, maybe it's fantasy. I'm not sure yet. I haven't made up my mind, but that's really where I want to see if I can start over again in today's day and age and make it work with all the tools that authors have, with all the support systems, with this ecosystem that has popped up, these cottage industries to help authors become publishers and have a successful career. Whereas when I started out, there was none of that. None of that support was available. But again, you didn't have the competition you had back then. You didn't have the problem of visibility. You get all that support, but you have all these other new problems. And I want to see if I can do it
Mm.
again as a new author is now trying to make it. That's essentially what I would be doing, because I'd use a pen name. So I
Yes.
wouldn't have my brand
Mm,
pushing the book. I
mm,
wouldn't have my
mm,
readers coming
mm,
in, so
mm,
I
mm,
think that's exciting, and I could fail, but you never know until you try.
mm,
It's just a book.
mm. I
It's
love it.
not solving world peace here.
Fantastic. And where can people find you, Ty, where if they want to look you up?
HyHutchinson.com.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Thanks so much. This has been a
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
loads of fun, and I'll have you back again. Don't you worry.
Sure, anytime.